You think you can beat me? General Cervantes, the unparalleled, the undefeated, the unshaven. We will show them the meaning of fear. Not beard, you fool! Fear!
I think his amazing voice lines and glorious beard are enough to warrant using, but Cervantes does offer some other good benefits. This enemy general served under Walhart, and in phase Cervantes is a lance armor unit. Free-to-play armor units are not super common, and access to merges via heroic grails will make Cervantes quite valuable if you care about arena score and you want to abuse some busted armor skills. For stats, he's going to come with 50 HP, 45 attack, 31 speed, 44 defense, and 25 resistance. Extremely good HP attack and defense at the cost of pretty low base res for an armor unit. They never really min-max free or demoted armor, so Cervantes will have some unnecessary speed if you just wanted a pure tank. However, 31 base speed can be decently impactful if fighting other slower units. I wouldn't say a speed bullet is going to be common, but hey, you can try if you want. What Cervantes will specialize in is top tier physical bulk, 50 HP, 44 defense, and super boons in both stats. This man will be a brick wall to physical damage threats, and with 45 base attack, he can also lay on the pain when countering back. Thanks to the nature of save skills, the lower res may not hurt Cervantes as much. For his weapon, Cervantes has the Defier's Lance Plus. This inheritable lance has 14 might, and at start of combat, if the foe is more than 75% HP, grant plus 5 defense, inflict minus 5 defense on the foe, and if the foe has defense field buffs, you inflict an in-combat debuff of equal value to the foe's defense stat, and the user gains a defense boost of the same value. I'm not sure why it specifies it calculates each stat independently when there's only one value anyway. Okay, so Defier's Lance Plus is technically a new weapon, however this effect comes from last year's 3 houses summer weapons, for example, Summerleone's Sunflower Bow Plus. These weapons essentially use the same mechanic as Freya's Binding Necklace B skill. I like to think of it as stealing the enemy's field buffs because you inflict a penalty in combat that cancels out the buff, and the user gains a bonus of the same value. If the foe has plus 6 defense, Defier's Lance inflicts minus 6 defense on the foe to cancel it out, and Cervantes will gain plus 6 defense during combat. In addition to the base effect of this weapon, it already grants plus 5 defense and inflicts minus 5 on the foe. This is just a different flavor of plus 5 attack and defense. For the activation condition, it only works on healthy foes, which might be an issue if you cannot finish the enemy off in one round. Overall, this lance is focused purely on physical matchups. If the enemy buffs up their defense, you just take that buff for yourself, which means more damage out of Cervantes. Now, for the rest of his kit, Cervantes comes with Ignis as a special, not a surprise there. For his A skill, he has attack and defense ideal 3, plus 5 attack and defense when at full HP, or if you have a bonus active. That's nice for getting to the tier 4 version if you haven't gotten Skyhawk yet. For his B skill, we got the classic Wary Fighter 3, prevent unit and foe from making a follow-up attack. Not really amazing nowadays, especially with no follow-up being everywhere. All in all, Cervantes has an okay base kit, but I was not expecting much anyway. Being a free arm unit itself is kind of the valuable part here. For those merging this mustached man, he gets plus 1 HP attack and defense from the neutral nature, that's prime to keep. You could also go with an HP or defense super boon, either one is fine since more HP helps with magical hits too. In terms of free-to-play armor units, Cervantes has a little competition, but generally speaking, we don't get a ton of free armors in the first place. There is only one other heroic girl option, and that's Valentine's Ellwood. In terms of recent units, Benny is a demoted option, at least with good HP and defense. Benny drops more speed for much higher resistance, but his base attack is actually not that high, at least compared to Cervantes. If you need to KO stuff, then it's tough to beat 45 base attack. If you want to survive physical and magical hits, then Benny might be better off. Generally, the speed difference won't matter here against any decent attacker. A more interesting comparison may actually be Effie. From launch, she had really high HP and attack, okay defense, and low speed and res. Her Refine is not highly praised, and for save builds specifically, it's kind of bad because half its effects only work once per phase. While other base stats do matter, Effie has been a launch armor and many people merged her up since it was easy to do over the years. She gets 4 sets of dragon flowers, which is plus 4 to all stats, and has a resplendent outfit if you wanted to spend some money, which grants another plus 2 to all stats. Considering Cervantes gets 1 set of dragon flowers himself, there's not the largest difference between the two. Effie sacrifices defense from HP and res while keeping up an attack. The main reason I bring this up is the potential arrival of a rearmed arcane lance. Those arcane weapons can breathe some new life into your favorite older units, even if everyone can still use them. Now, while pure total stats are close between Cervantes, Effie, and the others when you include Dragonflowers, natural BST still matters for arena score. Even if Effie gets all these extra stats, score-wise they do not count. That's why Cervantes is automatically valuable for some players. For any non-arena scoring mode though, choose your favorite. Let's move on to builds. You can keep Cervantes' base kit for a pure physical damage tank. In general, that would be his main role, although you can go pure defensive and stacking since his attack is so high already. Defier's Lance can stack a ton of defense at whatever fine, and you can rob the enemy of their defense field boss, which just means more damage as well. Attack and defense ideal is a bit tough to activate for armors since you ideally want bonuses active. You don't have Oath or Rouse self buff options, but you could run the budget double wave setup. Not amazing, but you keep the ideal skill active. You can of course just bring outside help. That would also free up the C slot and Sacred Seal slot for things like Attack Smoke, Panic Ploy, Armor March or Boots, and Quick Riposte. In the B slot, where a fighter prevents Cervantes from doubling, but you can stop faster units with it. Unfortunately, any no follow-up effect would just make this skill useless. Not exactly budget options, but thanks to ephemeral combat manuals in the past, we had the chance to pick up free copies of Special Fighter from Picnic Felicia, and I think there were like 3 Bold Fighter holders as well. Special Fighter is great for cooldown and guard, plus you can pair it with Quick Riposte as a seal. For Bold Fighter, player phase arm units are not exactly common nowadays, but hey, when you got 45 base attack, it's still a strong skill. I believe we had some Armor March combat manuals as well if you wanted to run at enemies. For some other skills, you could replace attack and defense ideal with bond or form options. For specials, Ignis is a bit tough to proc without extra cooldown, so bonfire could also be better. You can also just run healing specials. Now let's get to the premium stuff, which is actually kind of boring because the answer is just use save C skills. Why you need to acquire a save skill for yourself? Cervantes is practically gifted a great A and B skill combo thanks to Halloween Degincia as this month's ephemeral combat manual. You can get Sturdy Stance 3 and Slick Fighter 3, which is just amazing. More attack and defense stacking, guard, quick riposte, and you ignore debuffs on Cervantes. That is always a really good perk for army units since their base stats are so dang high to start with. As for which save to choose, I would suggest near save since the only magic damage in melee combat comes from dragons. Usually there are not as many dragons who want to initiate, however in recent times we have been getting more of them thanks to more cavalry dragons coming in. Still, besides dragons, every other attacker deals physical damage, which means we just stack pure defense, and Defier's Lance works nicely for this purpose. Pair this build with Steady Breath and you can get off Ignis or Aether, or at least get it off much faster. Now you can change things up since there are just so many armor fighter options. Crafty Fighter grants guard, and you can run that with Attack and Defense Bond 4, which was also on Dancer Quan as the ephemeral option. You could also just use Steadfast Lance Plus, which basically is like the Bond 4 skill. Run that to neutralize Attack and Defense debuffs. Pair that with Sturdy Stance 3 for guard, and you can also just have Wily Fighter to disable enemy field boss. If you wanted to stack more resistance, then things like Close Defense 4 are also an option. Again, feel free to build more reds if you want. A build that technically helps with physical and magical tanking is Stout Lance with Pavis Hardy Fighter and Steady Breath. This is an interesting setup. Without a slaying weapon, Pavis only gets charged to 1 cooldown to start the battle. Normally, that's not great. However, Stout Lance or Courtly Candle gives 50% damage reduction on the first attack when you're doubled, and for the second attack, you would then have Pavis double proccing for 75% DR. With Steady Breath, this setup works into guard, but you have no follow-up attacks, which may mess up future engagements. If you can get cooldown from allies like Thor, Brave Lucina, Fallen Ninian, or Dua Hilda, then you can instead use Quick Riposte as a seal. The only way to prevent Pavis from charging would be no special charge plus guard, which is not common on attackers generally. Personally, I do think guard plus tempo will become a more prevalent combo eventually. For the moment though, while this setup isn't perfect, it's quite a neat combo coming from an inheritable weapon for Hardy Fighter. With that said, the first 2 arcane weapons we had both were pretty good for Hardy Fighter builds, so if a future Arcane Lance does happen, then Cervantes may be able to just adjust his build around that. For safe builds specifically, there is just a lot of customization because you only care about enemy phase, and there are a million Fighter B skills to choose from. Whatever the Arcane Lance ends up having, Cervantes can probably make it work in a safe build. So, should you 5-star Cervantes? Well, we have a ton of busted army units already, but we don't see a ton of free-to-play options, so there is inherent value here. Stat-wise, Cervantes is mostly focused on physical tanking and has great base attack to make counters sting. You can stack more resistance if you want, and damage reduction can also help out. For For his inheritable Defier's Lance Plus, it is a new weapon, but it's not the craziest inheritable. It does help in physical matchups by stealing enemy defense buffs, which means more damage for Cervantes, and he becomes even tankier. There are a lot of other attack and defense based lances though. While there are some long time demoted lance army units available, like I mentioned, for arena scoring, Cervantes is the new shining option. You can't really solve that issue. If that's not a concern for you though, then he's not the super standout when you're considering max investment, although he is also coming relatively early into the current next gen. As for builds, again, lots of inheritable lances to choose from, and army units have so many busted B skill options. If you go for near save, then things are really easy to build around since you only care about enemy phase. I wouldn't suggest far save, but you can try it if you want, and maybe a future arcane lance would fit that role better. Last reason to use this guy, he has a glorious beard. I don't think I need to elaborate further. That would be it for this video, and let me know your thoughts on Cervantes. An updated heroic Grail army unit is always a bit valuable, so I'm sure you'll see this guy around at least a little bit. I have to say, Awakening has some great villains, but I can't believe Validar still isn't in the game yet. That's kind of crazy at this point. How many more Grimas are we going to get before he finally debuts? Go and get Cervantes from his Grand Hero battle, and thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.